In the last video, we talked about consonants and their places of articulation. In this one, we'll talk about the voicing of consonants and also the manner of articulation, the nature of the obstruction that's happening in the mouth. Voicing is basically your vocal cords are vibrating. If you hold your hand against your larynx, so your Adam's apple if you're a man, or where one would be if you're a woman, if you feel a buzz there, if you put two fingers against the Adam apple, then it's voiced. So if you just speak for a while, you can figure out the voice sounds in English. So let's say s as in snake, s, s, s. You don't feel any vibration there. If you do z like buzz, z, 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 you're going to feel vibration against your fingers. The sounds which have vibration are voiced sounds. So the question is, are vowels voiced? A, E, O, U. It turns out they are. In fact, the word vowel comes from the word vocal via the French voyelle, and vocal is vocal cords are vibrating, voice. So a vowel means a voiced. If we look at these groups of consonants that I have here, there are some sounds for which the vocal cords are vibrating, which are voiced sounds. Whispered sounds is basically rendering every sound voiceless. If I whisper, I'm making all of my voiced sounds to become unvoiced sounds. My vocal cords aren't doing anything at all. I hope you were able to hear that. But whispering is basically turning off your vocal cords so that every voiced sound becomes an unvoiced sound or a voiceless sound. Like if we look at these four English words, Zeus, the first sound is voiced, the second sound is voiceless. Zoos, both the first and the last sounds are voiceless. Suze, then the first sound is voiceless, the last sound is voiced. And Seuss, like Dr. Seuss, both the first and the last sounds are voiceless. So you can see these voiced, voiceless contrasts are used pretty productively. All four of these words have the same vowel. All four of these words start with an alveolar sound and end with an alveolar sound, a fricative. The only difference is the voicing. So if we look at these groupings of sound, s, f, g, th, s, f, th, are voiceless. G is voiced, so that would be the odd one out. W, r, k, n. W, r, n are voiced. K is voiceless, that would be the odd one out. J, the, m, p. J, the, and m are voiced, p is not. L, r, h, v, L, R, V are voiced, H is not. K, R, Y, Z, R, Y, Z are voiced, K is not. T, W, H, Sh, T, H, T, H, Sh are voiceless, W is voiced. This is the odd one out. Another dimension besides place and voicing is manner. What kind of an articulation is it? What kind of a block is happening? If the air is totally stopped, if the bottom part of your mouth, your vocal tract, and the top part totally come together with no air coming out, this is called a stop or a plosive. It's impossible to hold on to one of these stops or plosives. So p and b are bilabial stops. I can't hold on to a p. P. I have to go p, 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 and say it over and over again. T and d, t, d, t, d. These are alveolar stops. K, g, k, g, k, g. Those are velar stops at the velum. And then is a glottal stop. This top row are voiceless sounds. The bottom row are voiced sounds. These are bilabial, alveolar, velar, and glottal. Fricatives are a kind of sound where there isn't a complete obstruction, but that the two articulators are almost touching with just a tiny channel for the air to go through. The air is partially stopped. This is called a fricative. And I like to remember this because the word fricative sounds like friction, where two things are just close enough that there's some friction between them. And the word fricative also starts and ends with a fricative. In fricatives, unlike stop, you can hold onto, you can hold out, because the air is still coming out. you can hold on to those sounds for a long time. So we have f and v as labiodental fricatives, th and the as interdental fricatives, s, z as alveolar fricatives, sh and zh as postalveolar or alveolopalatal fricatives, as they're sometimes called, and h is a glottal fricative. This top row is voiceless, the bottom row is voiced. These are labiodental, these are interdental, these are alveolar, postalveolar, and glottal. Affricates are a combination of a stop and a fricative. So the articulators start out completely blocked and then quickly move into a fricative position where there's a little bit of an opening. You can think of it as you take a stop and you add a fricative. Add a fricative, affricate. The air starts out blocked and then is only partially blocked. So in English, these four words all end with an affricate sound. Ads, cats, judge, church. So we have ts and z, like tsitsi fly or tsar, za, za, za. We don't start a word with z, but we can end a word with z in English. Ch and j. So this would be the IPA way of doing a ch or a j. This ligature is optional. You'll often see it to show that these are meant to be pronounced as a single sound, but you'll see it left off as well. So it's t plus the sound, or the symbol that looks like an integral in calculus, and then d with a zh that looks a little bit more like a cursive. These are palatal fricatives, which are used in Chinese among many other languages. Ch, ch, this would be the q, chi, chi, and this would be ji, ji, the J-looking letter in the Mandarin pinyin. Chi, chi, ji, ji. So the affrication happens at the palate, at the top of the mouth. These are retroflex alveolar, which also exist in Chinese. Ch, ch, j, j. This would be ch in the pinyin, ch, ch, and zh in the pinyin, j, 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 j. The tip of the tongue is curled back. That's what this sort of extra curling indicates, that the tongue tip is curled back. We see this little retroflex with the tip of the tongue curled back can happen to alveolar stops. A lot of times this will be done in Indian accents like da, da, ta, ta, na, na, la, la, ra, ra, where the tip of the tongue is curled back. Nasal sounds can occur at all different kinds of places as well. This is where the lips are blocked, so no air comes out of your mouth, but the air instead gets opened up and comes out through your nose. These are normally called a stop because your mouth is totally blocked, although you can hold on to these because the air is coming out your nose. So we have a bilabial nasal, ma, 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 a labiodental nasal, ma, 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 which is pronounced with the bottom lip to the top tooth, ma, ma. It's not a common sound, it's not really used in English, but in other languages. Na, 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 alveolar, nya, 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 nya. This is a very useful and important sound in French and Italian and Spanish and Portuguese and Russian, this palatal nasal, nya, nya, nya. And then we have the velar nasal, nga, nga, nga. This would be, again, the NG combination in English is a velar nasal. And that makes sense. N shows the nasalness of it, like the alveolar nasal, and then the letter G shows the velarness of it, because G is a velar stop, and la is also a velar. And this symbol actually looks like halfway between an N and a G, or an elephant a little bit is what it reminds me of. These can be pronounced for a long time. An interesting thing about nasals, when you have a cold, the sinus cavities are blocked with mucus, so you cannot produce a nasal sound. So this sentence, Mom, I can't sing with my nose running, has lots of nasals in it. Ma, ma, na, nga, ma, na, nga. But if I pronounce it like I have a cold, the nasal becomes the oral version. So ma is a bilabial nasal stop. It becomes b, a bilabial oral stop. So Mom, I can't sing with my nose running. If I plug my nose, sounds like Bob, I can't sing with my nose running. With my nose running. So you see the nasalness gets taken away. As soon as I close off my nose, the nasal sounds can't come out, and I'm left with the oral version. So this is with an oral stop. The back is closed off here, so no air can come out. In the nasal version, the soft palate, the uvula opens up, so air can come out my nose and come through there. Approximants, I said that fricatives is where there's just a tiny channel for air. Approximants are a sound where there's actually a lot more room for air to come out, though it's a lot less room than would be true in a vowel. So ya is an approximant, which is actually pretty close to the vowel E. E is the most constricted vowel. Ya is the least constricted consonant, and so ya and E sort of blend into each other. This is why that letter Y in English, which is used to represent a ya sound, often gets used as a vowel. R, the American English R, is an approximant. You can see the tip of the tongue is curled back here, but it's closest to the alveolar ridge. So it's an alveolar retroflex. Retroflex means it's bending backwards approximant. So this is what the mouth looks like for R. And the American English R, this alveolar retroflex approximant, is written with an upside down R. A right side up R would be an alveolar trill, R, like the British Red Riding Hood, if I was going to be very proper. L, actually the tip of the tongue blocks, but there's room for air to come around to the sides of the tongue. It's hard to see in a vertical cutoff like this, but in a horizontal we'd see air is flowing around to the two sides of the tongue. That's a lateral approximant. And then W is a labiovelar approximant. So air, even though the tongue is partially blocked back here at the velum and is partially blocked at the lips, there's enough room for air to come through at different points in the articulation of this very complex sound. So R, L, Ya, and W are the English approximants. Ya is central, it's palatal. R is alveolar. This is a very difficult sound. It's a shibboleth for American English, meaning it's kind of a deciding form of whether you've got the American accent down or not. The only other language I know that has this exact same R is Albanian. And then W, this labiovelar, it's hard for learners of speaking other languages that don't have a W to get this. It's often replaced with a V, actually, like we want to go with you instead of we want to go with you, because this labiovelar is the most complex articulation in terms of what the tongue has to do of any English sound. Why would Japanese speakers mix up the lateral approximant and the alveolar approximant? The l-r, there was actually a famous example from the 1990s where a Japanese ambassador said to Bill Clinton, "I want to congratulate you on your election," but because the lateral approximant was replaced with an alveolar approximant, the message came out as something very, very different. So in Japanese, there's a single sound, which is about halfway between a l and a r. It's a retroflex lateral sound, and this is why you get websites like English.com, where the L in English sounds a little bit more like an R in English, and this is sort of a treasure trove of examples of interesting uses of English by non-native English speakers. Other R-like sounds, there's this tap, ara, ara, ara. This is actually like the T's in the word butter, butter, butter. And then a real trill, which is important in languages like Russian or Spanish, where it's a real arra. So perro is dog, pero with this one is butt. Guerra is going to be war in Spanish using this one. And I remember this being very difficult for me as a Russian learner. I can remember the exact moment I learned how to trill my R so that I wasn't saying Federov, but Federov.